Have you ever stopped to think about how some people seem to follow an invisible script, always repeating the same toxic behaviors? Today, we're going to talk about something that can deeply impact your emotional life, the 10 negative habits that every narcissist has. These behaviors are not accidental. They are part of a natural pattern for these individuals. Trying to convince someone with narcissistic traits to change is an illusion. They function this way because they need this style of interaction to maintain control and feed their internal needs. This video aims to clarify, not to turn you into an expert on narcissism. After all, what really matters here is not labeling or diagnosing anyone, but helping you reflect on the dynamics of your relationships. If you're involved with someone who exhibits these behaviors, it's crucial to understand that there is no peace or emotional health alongside such a person. Staying in this kind of relationship is like trying to swim in a river of mud. The harder you struggle, the more exhausted and trapped you become. If you find it difficult to leave this situation, understand that it's not impossible. Yes, it can be challenging, but it depends entirely on your decision. No one is going to step into your life to save you or make this choice for you. It's important to be clear that love does not change a narcissist. You will not be the exception. They need constant validation to survive emotionally, and this cycle only ends when you decide to break it. Hello, I'm Emma Vogel. My mission is to show you that you were never the problem. If this content resonates with you, like the video and subscribe to our channel. Now, let's explore the first of these habits, which may have already caught your attention at some point in your life. Pay close attention, because these signs may be more present than you realize. Relationships with narcissistic people are like a maze with no exit. They trap you in a dynamic that, even though it's harmful, can seem impossible to leave. This happens because these relationships aren't just based on the narcissist's behavior, but also on the victim's emotional dependence. Yes, you heard that right. The difficulty in breaking this cycle is often rooted in the internal patterns of the person suffering, not just the other's actions. When we're immersed in this kind of relationship, it's easy to normalize behaviors that, in any other context, would be unacceptable. How many times have you caught yourself justifying abusive actions with phrases like, "He does this because he loves me," or "That's just how he is"? This mindset is dangerous because it masks the real impact of these behaviors on your emotional health. Living with someone who disrespects, humiliates, or abuses you, whether verbally, emotionally, or psychologically, is deeply damaging. And more importantly, it reflects an internal wound that needs healing. Emotional dependence is one of the main reasons victims remain trapped in these relationships. It arises when we stop valuing ourselves to prioritize the other, sacrificing our needs to maintain harmony, or at least the illusion of it. This pattern is often linked to our childhood, to the first emotional connections we formed, and to the models of love we learned to accept. When we don't heal these wounds, they manifest as dysfunctional relationships in adulthood. But here's the crucial point. While the narcissist won't change, because they simply lack that ability without professional help, you have full power over your own transformation. Recognizing that you deserve respect, genuine love, and balanced partnerships is the first step to breaking this cycle. Ask yourself, why am I accepting this? Why am I allowing my well-being to be neglected? There is no love without respect, just as there is no happiness without healthy boundaries. It's essential to understand that loving another person starts with self-care. If you're always putting your needs second to please the other, that's not love. That's emotional dependence. And fortunately, it can be overcome. Understanding your own patterns and learning to set clear boundaries are powerful tools for rewriting this story. Now that we know the weight of these toxic relationships, let's explore how to identify one of the first alarming signs of narcissistic behavior: the constant need to be the center of attention. First habit, the need to always be ahead. One of the first signs that you're dealing with a narcissist is their constant need to be ahead, as if they must be the center of attention at all times. This trait goes beyond simple vanity or a desire for recognition. It's almost as if the person feels an internal compulsion to steal the spotlight, even in situations where it makes no sense. Have you noticed that in events or conversations, this person always finds a way to redirect the focus to themselves? This happens because, for a narcissist, merely participating isn't enough. They need to dominate. This behavior may seem harmless at first, but it carries an implicit message. Everything must revolve around them. Imagine you're sharing a personal achievement, something you worked hard for and deeply pride yourself on. Instead of celebrating your victory, the narcissist quickly interrupts to tell their own story, usually more exaggerated or impressive, to ensure the focus returns to them. This pattern is repetitive and draining because it minimizes your accomplishments and puts you in the background. This dynamic also reinforces the emotional control the narcissist tries to exert over you. By constantly placing themselves at the center, they feed their inflated self-image and keep their victim in a position of inferiority. However, here's an important point. You have the power to recognize this game and decide how much longer you'll allow them to steal your energy. After all, who truly deserves your time and attention? Second habit, ruining special occasions. Another defining habit of narcissists is their ability to turn special moments into occasions of pain and confusion. This may seem strange or even hard to believe for those unfamiliar with this behavior, but for victims, it's a painful and recurring reality. Narcissists take morbid pleasure in ruining what brings others happiness, especially if that happiness doesn't directly involve their own ego. Imagine you're celebrating a personal milestone, like a graduation, birthday, or even an important family event. Instead of celebrating with you, the narcissist will do everything to sabotage the moment. They might start an argument, create unnecessary drama, or simply refuse to participate. The goal? To make you feel bad or question your own joy. For them, others' happiness is a direct threat to their sense of superiority. This behavior reveals something profound about narcissistic psychology. They hate seeing others happy because it confronts them with their own insecurities and limitations. Since they can't handle these internal feelings, they project their discomfort onto those around them. They do this so naturally that often the victim doesn't even notice the pattern. They just feel the weight of constant frustration and disappointment. But here's a crucial point. When you recognize this behavior, you also begin to understand how harmful it is to stay in such a relationship. After all, no one deserves to have their moments of joy systematically destroyed. Third habit, prioritizing strangers. One of the most puzzling and painful behaviors of a narcissist is how they prioritize strangers, people with no real significance in their lives, while relegating their own victim to the background. This habit is part of a conscious or unconscious strategy to emotionally manipulate those they're in a relationship with. By valuing strangers, the narcissist reinforces their control over the victim, who begins to feel inferior, neglected, and perpetually inadequate. This pattern may seem confusing at first. Why would someone do this? The answer lies in the narcissist's relentless need to keep their victim in a state of emotional dependence. When they show exaggerated attention to strangers, whether through gifts, compliments, or simply dedicating time to them, they create a false perception that these people are more important than the victim. This breeds jealousy, insecurity, and a sense of abandonment, making the victim work even harder to regain their validation and attention. The impact of this behavior is devastating. The person in the relationship begins to question their own worth, believing they truly aren't enough to deserve the narcissist's affection. This dynamic fuels the toxic cycle. The more the victim tries to achieve the impossible, the narcissist's total approval, the further they drift from themselves and their own needs. But here's something important to reflect on. Why are you accepting this treatment? If you notice you're always competing for scraps of attention while the narcissist freely gives recognition to others, maybe it's time to question the real purpose of this relationship. You deserve to be with someone who sees you as a genuine priority, not a pawn in an emotional game. Fourth habit, inability to answer simple questions. Another defining habit of narcissists is their inability to answer simple, direct questions. This behavior may seem confusing or even frustrating, but it's part of the emotional manipulation pattern that defines these individuals. When questioned, narcissists find ways to avoid clear answers. They might change the subject, twist the question, or even blame the person asking for being invasive or controlling. This doesn't happen because they struggle to express themselves. Quite the opposite. Narcissists know exactly what they're doing. Their refusal to give direct answers is a strategy to maintain control over the conversation and, by extension, the person they're interacting with. Healthy relationships rely on open and honest communication, but narcissists systematically reject this. When you try to get a straightforward answer, you end up trapped in a cycle of confusion and emotional exhaustion. You push, insist, and still get nothing but evasion. This not only drains your energy, but also puts you in an inferior position while the narcissist maintains their superiority. But here's something to reflect on. Why do you keep accepting this behavior? If someone consistently refuses to engage in clear, direct dialogue, that says more about them than you. This toxic dynamic persists only because you allow it. Recognizing this is the first step to breaking the pattern. Fifth habit: setting rules for others but not following them. Another hallmark of narcissists is their hypocrisy in enforcing strict rules for others while exempting themselves. This behavior reveals not just their need for control, but also their complete disregard for the standards they impose. Narcissists love creating unrealistic expectations and criticizing those who don't meet them. Yet when it comes to themselves, those same rules simply don't apply. Imagine a situation where the narcissist forbids you from seeing friends or family, claiming it harms the relationship. Yet they do exactly what they forbid you from doing without remorse or justification. This constant double standard serves to keep you submissive while they act as if they're above any rules. This imbalance reflects something deeper. Narcissists aren't interested in fairness. They're interested in power. By imposing one-sided rules, they reinforce their superiority and keep you in an inferior position. Worse, many victims start accepting this as normal, believing they're the ones failing or need to try harder to please. But here's the crucial question. Why are you letting someone impose rules on you that they don't follow? If you're constantly adjusting your life to meet their demands while they do the opposite, that's not love. It's emotional dependence. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and reciprocity, things narcissists don't offer. Sixth habit: punitive silent treatment. One of the cruelest and most manipulative behaviors a narcissist uses is the punitive silent treatment. This isn't just ignoring someone. It's a carefully crafted emotional weapon to punish, control, and weaken the victim. The silent treatment is like a locked door, cutting off all communication and leaving the victim in despair and confusion. When a narcissist employs this tactic, they're sending a clear message. You're not important enough to deserve my attention. Yet they know this absence will make the victim scramble to reconnect. It's a calculated strategy to maintain emotional control. The victim, meanwhile, spirals into self-doubt. Did I do something wrong? Could I have acted differently? This forced self-reflection only deepens their suffering and guilt, even when the problem was never their fault. The emotional toll of the silent treatment is devastating. It creates a dynamic where the victim grows weaker while the narcissist's power remains unchallenged. Every attempt to break the silence, apologizing, begging for conversation, seeking answers, only feeds the narcissist's control. They watch, satisfied, as the victim exhausts themselves trying to fix something that was never their fault. But here's the key question. Why are you allowing someone to treat you this way? A narcissist's silence is never innocent. It's manipulation designed to make you feel inferior and dependent. Once you recognize this, you'll see it has nothing to do with love or respect. Healthy relationships thrive on open, honest dialogue, not emotional games. If you're constantly deciphering someone's silence, ask yourself why you're investing so much energy into something that only hurts you. Seventh habit: blame shifting. Another deeply ingrained habit of narcissists is blame shifting, a tactic to deflect responsibility for their mistakes onto their victims. Narcissists never admit fault, even when evidence is undeniable. Instead, they find ways to blame others, especially those closest to them, to preserve their sense of superiority. This behavior is so natural to them that victims often internalize the blame. Imagine the narcissist comes home angry after a bad day at work. They don't just take their frustration out on you. They claim, "If you'd supported me earlier, I wouldn't be like this." Or worse, they blame you for things entirely beyond your control, like accidents or financial setbacks. This constant blame shifting creates a toxic emotional environment where victims start doubting their own sanity. They exhaust themselves trying to fix problems that were never theirs to solve. Meanwhile, the narcissist comfortably plays the victim, pushing a distorted narrative that everyone else is at fault, never them. But ask yourself, why are you carrying the weight of someone else's mistakes? If you're constantly blamed for things outside your control, that's not love, it's manipulation. Healthy relationships are built on mutual accountability and respect, not power plays. 8th habit, creating emotional chaos. One of the most revealing narcissistic behaviors is their ability to create emotional chaos, projecting their inner turmoil onto those around them. Narcissists harbor a storm of insecurities, fears, and inadequacies they can't process. To cope, they externalize this chaos, dumping it onto their victims to relieve their own distress. This habit is deeply unsettling because it turns the emotional environment into a minefield. Narcissists manufacture problems, exaggerate trivial issues, and destabilize their victims with baseless accusations, constant criticism, or unpredictable moods. They might start arguments out of nowhere, make cutting remarks, or suddenly shift emotions, leaving the victim disoriented and anxious. The purpose of this chaos is clear, is to keep the victim in a state of vulnerability. The more emotionally unstable the person becomes, the easier it is for the narcissist to control them. They need the victim preoccupied with solving problems they themselves created, wasting energy to appease them or apologizing for things that were never their responsibility. This vicious cycle of chaos and blame reinforces the narcissist's power and further weakens the victim. But here's something essential to reflect on. You deserve peace. No one should accept being dragged into someone else's emotional chaos as if it were their fault. When you realize you're constantly trying to fix something you didn't even start, it's time to question why you're allowing this dynamic to continue. Healthy relationships are built on stability, mutual support, and respect, qualities narcissists lack. 9th habit, putting the victim down. One of the cruelest and most destructive habits of narcissists is their ability to tear their victims down, making them believe they'll never be enough. This behavior isn't just emotional control, it's a powerful tool to keep the victim trapped in a cycle of dependence and insecurity. Narcissists know exactly how to use words and actions to erode their victim's self-esteem, reinforcing their own superiority and ensuring the victim remains reliant on their validation. This pattern shows up in constant remarks about the victim's flaws or limitations, even when these criticisms are baseless. The narcissist might say things like, "You'll never achieve anything on your own," or "No one but me would ever accept you like this." These phrases are designed to make the victim doubt their worth and believe they need the narcissist to survive. Over time, this dynamic deeply damages the victim's confidence and self-image, making them increasingly vulnerable to emotional control. The impact goes beyond emotions. It affects every area of the victim's life. Those in relationships with narcissists often struggle with decision-making, fear of failure, or even hesitation to pursue personal or professional opportunities. This happens because the narcissist plants constant seeds of doubt, creating a paralyzing sense of inadequacy. But here's the key reflection. No one who truly loves you will deliberately diminish you. Those who respect and value you don't dim your light, they encourage your growth. If you're constantly being put down in a relationship, that's not love. It's emotional abuse. Now, let's move to the last and one of the most revealing habits. 10th habit, compulsive lying. This is one of the most defining and damaging habits of narcissists. Compulsive lying, a trait so ingrained in their personality that it becomes automatic. For them, lying requires no effort or guilt. It's simply who they are. They lie without hesitation, even when the truth is undeniable. This constant distortion of reality serves to manipulate, control, and maintain dominance over their victims. To outsiders, this behavior may seem absurd, but for the victim, the lies create a warped reality. The narcissist lies about facts, feelings, intentions, and even events that never happened. They do it with such conviction that the victim starts questioning their own perception. After all, how can you trust your own thoughts when everything around you feels uncertain? This phenomenon, known as gaslighting, is one of the most insidious forms of emotional abuse. But here's the crucial point. Why are you accepting a life built on lies? If someone lies repeatedly, even in the face of evidence, this isn't a flaw. It's who they are. Healthy relationships are built on honesty and trust, qualities narcissists don't possess. Tolerating these lies only reinforces the cycle of emotional dependence and personal erosion. You deserve to be with someone who values truth and respects your intelligence. Now, let's explore how to break free from these toxic patterns and prioritize your emotional well-being. Because the first step toward change starts with you. Now that we've covered the 10 negative habits of narcissists, it's time to reflect on the next step. How can you free yourself from this toxic cycle and prioritize your emotional health? The truth is, change doesn't begin with the other person. It begins with you. Narcissists don't change because they lack the capacity to do so without professional help. And even then, it's extremely rare. So, the most important question you must ask yourself is, why am I allowing this? The first step to leaving an abusive relationship is recognizing your own patterns of emotional dependence. Often, we tolerate destructive behavior because we're trying to fill an internal void, a childhood wound or unmet emotional need. But by allowing someone to mistreat you, you're reinforcing that dysfunctional pattern. It's time to look inward and ask, what makes me accept less than I deserve? Investing in self-love is essential to breaking this cycle. This doesn't mean just repeating motivational phrases in the mirror. It means making conscious choices to care for yourself. Start by setting clear boundaries with those who disrespect you. Be firm in communicating what you will and won't accept. Remember, boundaries are acts of self-love, not selfishness. Additionally, seeking professional support can be transformative. Therapy is a powerful tool for understanding your emotional vulnerabilities and learning to build healthy relationships. Support groups can also help, allowing you to connect with others who've faced similar situations. Sharing experiences and hearing stories of resilience can give you the strength to move forward. By the way, I invite you to share your experiences in the comments below. Remember, you deserve peace, respect, and genuine love. These don't come from outside. They begin within you. When you choose to invest in yourself, everything around you starts to change. Healthy relationships are built on partnership, balance, and mutual growth. Don't settle for less. Now that you understand these habits and their impact, it's time to act. The next video might be exactly what you need right now. Watch and discover. You are light. Never forget to shine.